I've been searching for you here for so long, so long. I've been searching for you here for so long, so long.
And what is happening, folks? It is your boy Blake, moneyblakeweather. Welcome to another episode, Unfiltered Bachelor. How's everybody doing? Welcome to 2023. Yeah, we've done some stuff. We dropped some episodes. Hopefully, y'all are staying warm, staying cozy, whatever the business might be. And it is, well, probably by the time you hear this, it'll be February. So, wow, we have just been rocking and rolling. And what have I been doing? Staying busy. I have been. I've been working. I've been working out. I've been just coming off of my fast, and I'm ready to hit the streets with some freshness. While I was on my fast, I would take time for myself, and I started dropping, stuff and clips on TikTok. And I happened upon this young brother over here who I do have on the podcast. His name is Raza North. Raza, how you doing, my man?
Dude, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Bro, it's so great to have you. And for people that don't know, everybody go follow Raza, or go just type in Raza on like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. It's so crazy. He does like quote unquote like free therapy for people on 6th Street. And it's one of the best concepts that I've ever seen. And it's so funny. I mean, like people just like come in with like, dang, my brother died last week, or dang, like my I haven't talked to my mom, or dang, like I got drama with women, men, fill in the blank, like it's so funny because like you just try to like walk them through stuff, man. But that's sort of my intro for you. But like for people that don't know you, Raza, like give a quick intro on yourself, how you got started, stuff like that, man.
Yeah, so I've lately been calling myself a digital marketer turned creator because this whole journey started off with me like going into the digital marketing space, and then I realized I wanted to be a creator. So about 2 years ago, I started off doing like crazy concepts, and that was kind of like the whole shtick that I was going with. But what I've always been drawn to is like an interviewing type of concept. Like I used to have a podcast in college as well, so it's really cool to see like how that space has transformed. Like I know a lot of people still do a lot of in-person podcasts, but lately I've been seeing like you have me in StreamYard right now. There's been like 5 other like different kinds of services that's popped up, and I'm just like, wow, like podcasting has never gotten like has never been like more easier. So that's kind of me. Like I decided to do this kind of concept because it really like plays well with what I enjoy doing.
That's awesome, man. What got you started though in like the road of therapy? Like why was that interesting to you? I'm very curious.
So right before I don't know, like if you go check out my TikTok, like you'll see if you scroll all the way down, like I've gone through so many different types of like content. And one of the comments I always get from brands is like, oh, like we've seen that you've made all these different concepts work, which is great because most people, when they create a concept, they have to stick to it because their audience will leave if they switch up. So I used to do like the classic like man on street interviews, asking people weird questions just to get the reactions. And right. I was like, I would try to obviously keep it at a border. Like that was my thing. I would never go past like a certain type of question, right?
Right.
But it got really like, it got to the point where I would leave my house having a list of questions, knowing the answers that I was looking for because I knew what would go viral. The free therapy thing came up when I was going to therapy myself, and I was seeing how helpful it was. And I was like, what do I actually enjoy doing? And what would I enjoy doing for a really long period of time? Because I think going into this, every new creator kind of thinks like short term, and I want to have longevity in my career. So I was like, what do I really love doing? What am I good at? Right. And I've almost naturally always had some sort of podcast. Talking to people was like a big strength of mine. And then the second thing is I'm very famous in my friend groups to give unsolicited advice. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I should take this unsolicited advice nature to the streets, see what I can
just take it to the streets. Let's go.
Let's go. Right. And the way this concept actually came about was hilarious because I was doing this man on the street stuff, and I was like, You know what? I get really tired. I walk like 10 miles a day when I'm shooting this stuff because you're just walking. You just, as soon as you find
Right.
gear, you just keep walking all day. It's great for exercise, but not great if you're doing it so often. And
Right. Yeah. It doesn't
so
seem
I decided
sustainable at all.
exactly. So I literally one day I was like, you know what? The worst that can happen is that this completely flops and I just come up with something else. So I saw a poster board. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna write free therapy on this thing and slap it on a tripod and see what happens. So I did it. I did it for
When
one
was the
night,
first time you did it?
probably around like 6 months ago. Not too long
Really?
ago. Yeah. So I've been doing TikTok for like 2 years, and after so many concepts, I finally like thought of this and came up with it, and we've just been running with it since then. Um, so yeah, I saw a poster board. I was like, let me just take this marker, write free therapy on it, go test this out. We went on the street. It was not like we weren't like, oh, I'm gonna mass produce this and put it on Facebook and say all that. None of that like came about until later, right? I decided to just sit there, talk to people, and just finally be able to convey my thoughts for once. Because I think the interview concept, it would focus more on the stranger than it did on me. Right. So I would not
Mhm.
really be able to like put myself out there. There was no branding behind it. I come from that digital marketing background. It was in my head. I was like, there's no way anyone cares about me in this situation. There's no carryover ever. Right. And I also don't get to express myself as a creative. So one of my camera guys, he was like, all right, we're just going to shoot this vertical, test it out. We shoot, I go back home, I post the first video. It goes completely viral like crazy. It's like 5 million views. It's still one of my like best like videos.
Oh,
And
wow.
and in that video, I was just like, this is actually what I think. I think it was a girl. Her name was like Kit or something like that. And she was asking about her getting cheated on. And I was just telling her that it's not her fault. It's not about her. And that was actually just genuinely what I thought. And since then, I was like, okay, this concept works. Let's run with it. And that's how Raz's office came about.
Bro, it's brilliant. I love it. Yeah. I noticed, yeah, there's a shift in like because you had two different channels that I found on YouTube. So I do a little investigatory work, you know. I'm Walter Cronkite over here, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I did notice you had the other one, it had some different content, and I was just like, okay, so there's a Raza's office. Um, and so yeah, I was really fascinated by that concept because it's really something I think I'm fascinated with it. It's really something that I probably been. I mean, I do that on this podcast. I've done podcasting for 8 years, but this particular podcast I've done for 4 years, and only in the last two has it really turned into more of since I've gone to therapy
Mm-hmm.
and seeing the benefits that have come out. And I tell people this all the time. It's not just going to therapy that does the work, right? It is the work that you do in between that is really where the change and everything comes from. Because in the event that, like, right, like somebody goes to the gym and they have a personal trainer and they only work out when they go see their personal trainer, but they only go see their personal trainer like once a month. And the personal trainer's like, oh, what you have you been doing in the meantime with the workouts that I gave you? Like, I haven't. Like, I haven't worked out
Mm-hmm.
since the last time. They're like, so where do we get started? And Trainer's like, well, I got to start back in the beginning because you didn't do no work. You've got to do the work in between. You got to read the books. You got to read the articles. You got to watch videos, and that's what I found out was super helpful for me. And obviously, it's therapy, but therapy is only a tool in a set of the toolbox that you use to improve on the pieces um, that it's the pieces of you that are traumatized and that are reacting out of it and making choices out of it. And so it's really fascinating to see just the average person, the average, I don't even want to say it's not like teens or anything. It's like the average 20 something year old to 30 something year old coming on your show and being like, hey, this is what's on my mind, because it's on everybody's mind. Relationship drama is on everybody's mind. Death is on everybody's mind. Is there a struggle at work? That's on everybody's mind. Like, there are big things that go on in people's lives that we're not taught how to react to and what healthy choices look like, because most of us don't come from healthy homes. You come from a single mother home, not to just put you on blast like that. I wouldn't do that unless I myself came from a single mother parent household.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are certain things that you are not taught and certain things you don't see. So when you see something healthy, you're like, I don't know about this. I don't trust it. And then you either self-sabotage it by looking for ways, or you act out, or you just move on to the next person, which is still self-sabotage because it's not what you're used to. People normalize drama because it's what they're used to when it's not normal at all. And so again, I'm going to use the word fascinating again. It's fascinating that somebody, you're really young. What are you, 20 something? You're 23, 24?
24, yeah.
Mazel tov. Happy birthday to you, man.
Thank you. I say this turn just because like I don't want to admit that it's been 5 months since I turned 24. Man, I sometimes like when I'm filling out forms and it asks me for my age, I'm like, dude, I'm getting old. What the heck? Because I think it's because I feel like in the social media world, like every like 1 year, like 1 year in the social media world feels like 10, right? Because you're posting every day, all that stuff. So when I see someone like coming up and it's like, oh, they're only 18 or they're only 20, I'm like, dude, I feel like I should like not be doing this right now. Like, this does not seem like I should be doing this. But as long as I can shave my beard and go down a few ages,
years,
yeah, a few years, I'll be fine.
It's so funny. I'm at the gas station, buying beer or liquor store or something, and they're like, oh, how old are you? And I'm like, 32, 33. No, I'm 34. And then they're like, well, what is it? I'm like, I'm 30. I'm 34. But I'm still in my head. I'm not 34. Like I don't feel like I look 34. Mexicans age different. Like, you got a little melanin in your skin. You just age a little. No, some white people be 34 and you swear they are either a soft 54 or a hard 41. You're like, you're not that age. That's not you.
Yeah.
You age like a banana peel in the sun.
I feel like the worst is like in areas where you have to be a certain age to get in, when they just like let you through without like a second thought. Like, of course they'll check your ID, but they're not even like looking. I'm like, dude,
right.
Can you please look and make sure that I'm not trying to fool you? Maybe this is fake. Like, I don't know. But yeah, that's like a big sign, but that hasn't happened to me yet. So that's
good.
Yeah.
It's good. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm just fascinated with somebody your age digging into the subject with pretty much peers, right? Like people your age and then making them aware, because making people aware that like, hey, I don't think you're handling this right. I'm sure, and I've seen it on the videos, these people realize like, well, nobody's ever said that to me, or like, that's not what my friend said, it's like, because most people, I'll say this, like when people go through breakups, right? Like a lot of people have those friends or that friend group that is, well, fuck them. They don't need you. They don't know what they're missing. And then instead of being like, all right, well, that sucks. You seem in pain. Like, can you want to talk about this? And then breaking down, well, like, all right, like, I'm not saying you need to change, but like, what would you do better? It's never the onus is never on the person for having to improve, because they're perfect. Everybody thinks they're fucking perfect and walking around like walking tens, when that's just not the reality of the situation. And so to have somebody like you actually give a little bit of like insightful truth as a outsider, I think it's beautiful, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And one thing I probably like realized while doing this show the most, like obviously if you've seen the channel, like we definitely pick out like stuff that's a little bit lighthearted, that's funny, that's like shocking. Right. But then there's obviously a few like bits here and there that are super serious, and most of like the serious good stuff. Like I've actually had more people come up to me about the YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is like only has like 2,600 subscribers, right? And they come up to me and tell me about that, because that's the one where they're watching like the long form stuff, the raw
long form
stuff,
content, right? Yeah.
And I think I noticed on the show that it's not really like advice that people are looking for at all times. Like a lot of times it's just people need someone to listen and like just sit there and listen to what they're going through, because most people don't have that. And to your point, a lot of people do need that outsider perspective. But what I've noticed on top of that is that a lot of people just aren't ready for the truth, because I feel like whenever they go through something, there's like this shock period of like 4 to 6 months where it doesn't hit them, like whether it's a breakup, whether it's someone's death, whatever it is, right? And so I think like myself, like I've noticed like I can't I can't just go in there guns blazing them, telling them what the right thing to do is, because most of the times, even if I was in that situation, everybody kind of knows what the right thing to do is. It's just like whether they're ready to take that step. And when you meet that person who's gone through their traumatizing experience or their really heartbreaking experience, and like maybe 6 months, like you've met them after the 6 month period, that's like when the advice like actually goes and helps them. Like that's where I've seen most people actually take something away from it. I think the most disappointing part of this show is that I know a lot of people come on the show, and the ones that are like, obviously they're the funny ones that are just people messing around. But besides those, the ones that are seriously going through something, they don't have like the resources to like follow up on that. And I know they're actually going through something real. Like, I try to keep things lighthearted because, again, I'm not licensed. I want to make sure all your listeners know that I'm not licensed. It's for entertainment. I do this because I know that a lot of people can't afford therapy, right? I know that it costs.
Raza, you gotta go. You told me you was licensed. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Dude, I've had people like, I have my profile picture on my business email. It's like me and like the nurse like
The little
scrubs.
scrubs.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, trying to like play into the character more, and they're like, "Are you a nurse?" Like, and I'm like, "Dude, no, I should put like not licensed on my forehead now at this point." But yeah, dude, I started this because it's like $150 to $200 per hour. I mean, I went to therapy when I was like at my software engineering job, and after that, I haven't gone, right? And I probably do need it just as much as anyone else does. But I really started it because of that, and probably my heart breaks the most when I see people in like real situations, and it's like, oh wait, fuck, this is not like, by the way, can I curse on the show? Or
Of course. Yeah, you can say fuck, shit, damn, whatever you want to say.
okay, perfect. So yeah, like I go from having one person come on, because the way it works is like when I'm on 6th Street, there's a mini crowd that forms, and there's like people waiting to like come on. So you'll have someone
Yeah.
come on, and
How
they're
does the
like,
line work there like that?
my cameraman, shout out to my camera guy.
He's
He
just
literally
like, hey,
manages the whole
you
thing.
go
Yeah,
that
like
way.
first come, first serve, and like there'll be like a bunch of chicks just like on my cameraman's ass, like just, oh, so how does this work? And it's like the entire description of what is going on is literally on the sign in front of him. So shout out to my camera guy. He really filters through all those people. But you'll have someone come on and they're like, oh, my girlfriend started an OnlyFans, something like that can become hilarious. And then the next person's like, oh, my parents died in a car accident. And you're like, what the, like, I'm not even,
Right.
you need real help. Like, I'm not the guy, but like, I'll listen to what you have to say. And
But
then
since
like,
I'm here, yeah.
yeah, and I'll go back home, and this is like, I'll shoot for like 3 hours straight every weekend, like 2 days in a row. And I mean, my girlfriend can attest to this. When I come back home, some days I'm just like I'm just so overly grateful for my life. And then also like, I feel like it takes a toll. Sometimes I come back and I'm like, holy fuck, like people are going through like so much shit. And like, all we see is like what's portrayed in the media and all this stuff, right? Like on social media, everyone's highlights and all this stuff. And I'm like, damn, like if people really knew what went on in people's lives, like they would probably live very differently. So that's like kind of like the deep behind the scenes version of what goes on in the show. But obviously nobody really sees that part.
Right. Yeah. That's the rest of the iceberg there. And I feel you, man. Like there are some conversations I'll have with people, right? I'm not a licensed therapist myself, but
Yeah.
I host a relationship podcast. And so having deep dives with people and going in, whether it's friends, new people I meet, whatever, there's a point where you leave and you're just like, oh my goodness, like whew, I need to recharge my battery because I'm giving myself to try and like help the world one person at a time. And to your
Mhm.
point, man, I'll say this: everybody has a story, and everybody wants to share their story, and everybody wants to be heard because we live in a world where there's so many voices. Not everybody feels like they are heard, and the ones that do get heard are the ones that people popularize. And
Mhm.
it's that same sort of notion of like people will share a celebrity's whatever versus their friends startup business, podcast, music. Like they won't promote their friends because that's not the
Mhm.
loudest voice in the vacuum. Like the loudest voice in the vacuum gets heard, and then like neglect, right, like will often come for these people that like feel left by the wayside.
Mhm.
And And that's sort of just the example in a nutshell, but I think a lot of people feel that way, and a lot of people just want to be heard or just want to get it off their chest. And like, who better to do it with than a stranger? Because like sometimes they feel like they can't even do it with their own friends, their own best friends. They feel like they can't get vulnerable. There's been so many times where people have come on your show and like, oh, I can't talk about this because I'm a man. And you're like, what is that? I'm a man. I talk about this. And I'm just the same way too. I'm Mexican, and like, bro, like that's so like, you got to be like a man, you got to be machismo. And like for me to like talk about this, like it's so funny because a lot of my friends or cousins are like, bro, I feel that way, but we're just men. I'm like, we can be different. We can just do different things, and it doesn't have to be this way. And like, doesn't it feel better to just talk and just get it off your chest? And like, doesn't it feel better to just do things healthier and do things for you? And they're like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. And to your point, there is a certain time where that does have to sink in and sort of process with people, because it's fucking new, man.
One thing I'll say is like, I think the stigma is so deep that like I'll notice like, and this is just like a funny observation, like if a guy comes on the show and he's with his girl and she's standing on the side, the amount of like the difference in like the way he'll communicate with me is like night and day, because I've seen it both, right? I've seen like where the girl isn't there and she's like off to like where like way behind my camera guy and like hanging out with her friends or something like that, out of earshot. And the difference is like massive, right? Like there's like a huge front we all put on when we're in front of our loved ones versus like just a stranger. And I'll have to like basically tell them that, hey, like, nobody can hear us, right? Like there's so much going on around us, like only you and I can hear what's going on. And that kind of helps break it. But yeah, I mean, I think like the space needs to open up a little bit more for guys. Especially like, I don't think it's going to be me that does it or like some other online personality that does it. I think like guys in general will have to start doing it in their own like lives, like individual lives. You know what I mean? Because I think what will continue to be portrayed and put out there is that we just need to like kind of like put it all inside, like become emotionally stunned and kind of put on this manly image, when really like if you look behind the curtain, a lot of the manly things that people end up doing are just like trauma responses, right? Like that's all it is.
Yes.
So yeah, like I don't think it's going to be some online personality. I think like what it's so deeply rooted that like society and how they portray what a man is would have to change. And I don't know how to like make that change. Like I can't really do that. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think I could do that all by myself. So
Doing it one person at a time is more helpful than not at that point. You know what I mean? Like having these conversations, me having this podcast, you being on the street, like we're just two people. We could look at it. I'm just a person, and but it's also like, yeah, you're one person who touches how many people, like gets to communicate with how many people, online, and then gets to communicate with how many people in person. And will everything click, and will everything change? Will every person you touch change? No. But like the thing that I learned very early on by doing this particular podcast, Unfiltered Bachelor, is like, even if I could shift somebody's life 1%, that 1%, mathematics, do mathematics, right? Statistics, whatever. 1% shift over a long period of time shifts you off the trajectory that you were on that was not good in the first place.
Yeah.
And if I could do that with one person, I used to say, I've done an honest day's work. And I had a friend of mine, Justin Bricker, come on the podcast. He's like, that's not honest life's work, man. Like there's people that don't give a shit about people. There's people that don't care. There's people that are just okay with doing their day job, okay with watching Netflix, and like other people just don't appeal to them. Changing other people's lives doesn't appeal to them. And so like take that, like not to be like, not to puff you up or puff me up, but like there is change that happens, even though it might not be as huge all in one fell swoop as possible. It's still possible to make change even on a small level, for it to grow and be bigger,
Yeah. And I have like, so since this is unfiltered, I'll give you a little look into like why that doesn't really like hit until like people in person, or like I check my Instagram DMs like from time to time, and it's like that's like when it hits me, because again, it's very hard, and you probably know this as well. It's very hard to like recognize that you're making some sort of change when all you see is data, right? Like that's all you really see, right? And it's like I have to really like get outside perspective a lot. Like my mom and my girlfriend are probably like the two most like the two people that really like tell me to like look at it the right way. Cause when you have like videos popping off, and like at this point, I don't really even like, I'm not really posting a lot of the stuff myself. Like it's all managed, right? So it's like at this point, I just kind of go in there, check everything's going good, and then go back to like doing my show, right? And
Right.
it becomes very hard to humanize the numbers because and I did this both for a good reason, but I think it's backfired. So my reason behind this was that I never want to become like big headed in any way. Like I don't want to feel like, oh, like I have so many thousands of followers. Oh wow, I'm such a famous guy. Like I'm just like, dude, it's literally just numbers. Like I'm no different than someone else. Just because the number on my little screen on a device says that, oh, like there's like a bunch of people that are following your stuff. I that's how I look at
Right.
it. I did it for so long that I think now I'm on the very far end of the spectrum where I don't even recognize it. And so that's where like I have to get that kind of perspective. And I do when I go on the street, like it was so weird. There was a moment 2 months after I launched like this whole show and started making all these channels, where more than ever, people were actually coming up to me and saying like, dude, I watched these videos. They've genuinely like helped me. And I was like, how is this even possible? Like, I just come here and do this. Right. But I think it's like important for me to like, and for you as well, to recognize that we like make it's a common thread. I think a lot of like people that do online like social media and stuff, they say this, and it's like I guess we are like helping people, and you can't really tell because they're not all telling you. Like most people would not be able to see me in person. They won't like reach out to me over DMs, but they're still watching, right? And it's
Right.
hard to come around to that idea, but it's so real, right?
It is. There's a certain air of having faith that like everything is going the way that it needs to go, and you can't see it. It's
Hmm.
there though, and like when you stop doing it, like what? Stop posting for 3-4 days a week, and then notice when people are like, "Hey, where are you?"
Yeah.
Like then you'll know people are watching. Then you'll know people are paying attention. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
it's that lack of, but like the same goes when you post. What's different when you post, right? Because the opposite side is like people still have to reach out and be like, "Man, this really touched me," or "I really like this," or "I really needed to hear this," and
Yeah.
that's when it becomes more tangible. That's when it becomes less like ethereal and more of like, I can touch this, I can taste this, I can feel the change that I'm making around me. And I didn't know that episode was going to do it. Like there's been so many episodes I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. It was good, but it wasn't. And people are like, man, that one. And you're like, really? Like, I was the one, huh?
It's always the unexpected ones. It's always the unexpected ones. That's what I've noticed. So I like had to almost like remove, because again, I come from that marketing background. So I'm like, I know I have to do this, and that's what's gonna make this pop. Flops completely when I do that,
And
right?
you're like,
And
no.
then I'm just like, I'll remove the expectation from all of it, and it just like it flows however it's supposed to flow. And like, yeah, that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned from doing this kind of stuff.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
So I notice a lot of what you tell people is a lot of like stuff that like, at least superficially, and at least where I'd start off talking with people. Again, I'm not an expert, but like, again, in my tenure of like digging into this, having therapists on, going to ongoing therapy, having dating coaches on, having countless guests, having these conversations, reading books and yada, yada. It, uh, where do you get a lot of this from? Do you do this? Like, do you do the same? Do you try to like be like, I like this podcast, or I heard this and that makes sense. Write this note down. Like, what is your process to try and like garner and glean a lot of the actual advice that is at least even the beginning starting points for helping people dependent on like what their situation is? Does that make sense? Did I frame that
Yeah.
question
No,
correctly?
that makes complete sense. Yeah. So I think a better way to tell this would be to give you a little bit of my backstory. Because
Okay.
as you mentioned, right, like I do come from a single mother like home, right? And that whole thing happened when I was 12 years old, right? Like my dad walked out, all of this stuff happened. We had to kind of find a way to not go homeless. Like, that's where the digital marketing agency came in, et cetera, et cetera. And so throughout that whole process from 12 to 24, I feel like I'm like continuously a work in progress, as I'm sure like everybody else is. But I found myself in a lot of like throughout that process in a lot of highs and lows. And to get myself out of those, I had to try like almost like across the board everything I could find. Right. And some things worked, some things didn't work. Like, sometimes trying meditation, okay, this is not for me, but I can see how this would work for someone else, right? I know I should be meditating, but why am I not meditating? So I think it's more of like self-reflecting, figuring out what works for me, and then going and reading and like seeing things across the internet that like what's worked for other people. Cause I think from 16 to like sophomore year in college or something like that, I was obsessed with like psychology, right? I would just read everything. I'm by no means a psychologist or anything like that. Have to always throw this in there, but
bro, you already fooled me, bro. You're here. You already fooled me.
Yeah, man. And so I would just dig into everything I could find about like how the human mind works, how the brain works, and all of that was just simply motivated for myself, right? It was all for myself because I wanted to break this generational thing that I was seeing like built up. Like I just didn't want to end up as another iteration of what already exists in like my family, in my culture, all of that stuff. Wanted to break out of it. So I had to figure out like, okay, if this is all we know, what else is out there that I don't know? And that's like what I used to like kind of frame like what I was looking up, what I was researching, all of that good stuff. And when I come like on the show and stuff, I bring all of that with me. And a lot of the times, some of it hits, some of it doesn't, right? Like some of it just isn't like, I just don't have enough context. Like a lot of times I'll tell people, it's like almost become a meme on my like page. It's like, I'll say this is way above my pay grade. And people are just
right, yeah.
they're like, dude, you can't keep saying it's above your pay grade. I'm like, dude, I have to say that. I have to throw that little thing in there because this is probably not like going to be contextually like relevant to this person. And most of the times it still is, but I got to create my safety net right there. So that's
right.
I definitely use my
it's like
own
when you're
Go ahead.
It's like when your friends say they give you some advice and then they say, but I don't know though.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. It's like, but I could be wrong. You know
But
what
I
I
don't
mean?
know though. Yeah, I don't know though.
Exactly.
Do you, man?
I'm actually like, what is it called? It became so common on like the Instagram page, which is where I feel like the most like of my community lives, like at least like the most engaged version. And it became so much of a meme that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make merch out of like above my pay grade or something like that. Like, cause you never know. Like I like tried forcing a merch line before and it never hits. It's always like when the audience comes up with like something, right? So
right.
definitely something I'm gonna look forward to making.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you got a whole plan. That's dope, man. Yeah, I think there's a lot of instances there where, because I spent my time. I'll admit this firsthand. I think it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, somewhere around there. Somewhere, I think it was maybe Thursday, Friday, when we finally got it locked down and booked. And I'd only seen your short content, so I went to YouTube and I went to go watch the longer extended version, the 30-minute, 40-minute videos, and I found myself like, I was like, it's a person like, what do I do? And I was just like, oh, you should do that. And then I'd hear you say it. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly like you should do that. Or I'd find myself like answering their questions, at least to a framework of being like, but yeah, that is sort of tough. And then when I would say like, that is sort of tough, you'd be like, but that's above my pay grade. Because a lot of it is sort of tough, but at the base level of it, I'll throw this tidbit out there, and this may be super helpful for you to dig into going forward as well. Is I started with this with attachment theory. You familiar with attachment theory?
Mm-hmm. Well, are you asking if I'm familiar with it?
Yeah. Are you familiar with attachment theory?
Styles and stuff like that, or just
the attachment styles and everything like that? Avoidant, anxious,
I'm like
secure.
I'm kind of familiar with it, but I haven't like fully dug into it.
Okay, a lot of people say that. A lot of people have heard the term. I feel like it's thrown around a lot of places on social media. So, attachment theory, in a nutshell, you have essentially three different kinds: anxious, avoidant, and secure. You got the notepad out. This guy taking notes. Anxious, avoidant, and secure. Two of those, anxious and avoidant, those are your insecure attachment styles, and obviously, secure is your secured attachment style. Just to, so throw all this in a nutshell. Secure people, they were loved enough, hugged enough, told they were good enough. They succeed. They have a good internal safety net. They are able to create healthy boundaries, are able to express themselves because they come from that family background. And just to note, a lot of our attachment styles formulate between the ages of like 2 and 6. Everything's on a spectrum. Depending on the event that happens in your life, you can sort of be like, I'm secure, but I sort of lean a little bit avoidant, or I'm secure, but I sort of lean something anxious sometimes. And just the same way with any attachment style, you don't live in it. It's not permanent. It's always static. It can always be ever changing. Like, I'm a recovering anxious attachment myself. So, this is something I definitely dug into. Anxious people were the ones who were these were the ones who that's a kid sitting by the door waiting for his dad to come and pick him up, and he never does. The abandonment issues, right? Those are the ones that suffer from that. And because of that abandonment, when they find love, they cling on to. These are the clingy people in the relationship, right? Like, these are the ones that don't go. They will stand in the doorways and be like, babe, we got to talk. Or, if it comes out in women, they're like, no, they're grabbing their guy's arm, or, their partner's arm, and just like, no, we've got to work this out. And then you have the opposite, which is avoidant people. And these are the kids that were usually neglected by one or more parents. They weren't hugged enough. I always say this, they weren't hugged enough either physically or mentally and emotionally, right? These are the kids that, hey, Junior, you gotta hit a home run. And then the kid hits a home run and he's like, Dad, I hit the home run. He's like, but you didn't hit 3, you didn't hit 4, again, they like, their parent wasn't emotionally receptive to them, so they don't know how to do it. So they're more islands. They know how to survive more so on their own. They're a little bit less trusting than people. And these are the ones, when there's a problem in the relationship, they're the first ones to pull away and sort of take that space.
I feel like I'm being called out right
well, we're going to learn together. Raza. That's what we're going to do today.
Oh no, I'm in the chair, huh?
What'd you come to therapy for today? Let me just flip the script on you. How about that? But them and anxious people, they tend to find themselves in life and tend to do this like push-pull dynamic where one pulls away, the other pushes towards it. And as they push towards, the other one pulls away, and it formulates this like very nasty, these are the toxic relationships you tend to see, because this doesn't happen with secure people. Secure people can match with an anxious person or an avoidant person, and they'll be like, no, this is enough. I'm okay. Thank you, though. Like, this has been a great relationship. Or, obviously, I think you need some time. I'm going to let you have that. Like, they will overly communicate and be like, hey, I'm not just ghosting you. I am taking this move, and here's why I'm taking this move. They will explain things to you because they had things explained to them. Nobody left them, but like, that's such a small majority of people. A lot of us weren't loved correctly in our youth. And what that all boils down to, why I bring attachment theory up, is because those are the shells that really help us understand that really everything stems from childhood trauma. And it doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be huge. The same chemical reaction happens. I've explained this time. I love explaining this because the same chemical reaction happens in my brain. If I got a spanking as a kid and I didn't feel I deserved it, then the same chemical reaction happens in your brain if you saw your friend get shot. It's the same chemical reaction. Like, there's not like more chemicals that happen in my brain than in your brain, right? The only difference is that, like a bomb, right? Like an explosion, mine was like a firework, and yours was like a C4 on a city block, right? Like, it is, those are two explosions. Yeah, explosions happened, but yours is more impactful, and it needs more cleanup. It needs more attention to it. And that's the same thing that happens with people. There's always these events that happen in our youth that will get triggered as we get older. And so, like, where it's like, hey, this guy and he's spending too much time out with his friends. It's like, that's an issue. Let's correct that. But also, like, what's the bottom line issue? Like, where does this stand? Did you have this problem with the previous boyfriend? And did you were you, let's bring it back to childhood real quick. Did you ever feel like this as a child, you know, or when is the first time you remember feeling like this? How old were you? When you can break that down, you disarm the rest of the bombs that go on down the line. And it no longer is a landmine that a partner feels like they're walking in. They feel like because it's tough when you don't know somebody, or when you only know somebody 6 months. You could walk into a landmine field and explode, and you didn't realize that was there, because that's not supposed to be there. Because that's not when you walk in a field, they're not there. Like, you're like, oh, I'm just doing what I normally do, and I think it's okay. But for somebody else, it may not be, because it's something. It's usually 99% of the time not related to anything you did. You just stepped on a landmine that's attached to something else at the beginning. And so that's rant over. But trauma, childhood trauma, is essentially
that was a
master
class. What do you mean? I'm sitting here taking notes and everything.
Insane.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, like, I think the best example you gave in there is like disarming the bomb before it triggers. Because I think what people forget is that it's not one bomb going off, it's a domino effect, right? And that is like, I mean, I used to think this was just me until like I started talking to more people openly about this. And it's like, all of this stuff is like, just, it is a domino effect, and people go down rabbit holes that you would have no idea that they're going down, just because they allowed that one thing to get triggered. And now they're overthinking. Like I found myself doing that so many times, right? Like, I'll think of one scenario in my head, and suddenly I've created this whole external world of like bad shit happening, right? That doesn't even exist. It's just there because I allowed that one bomb to go off, right?
Right.
And so it's really about, like, I guess what I've personally learned is like, it's really about implementing the therapy advice and all that stuff. It really just comes down to awareness, right? Like, it's like it doesn't go away. It's just about catching yourself when it's happening. And the worst part, I think the downside to this is, like, sometimes if it catches you on a bad day, where you don't have the strength to be aware that you're going down these like rabbit holes in your mind, or like you accidentally let something trigger you and set you off, it can send you through like a spiral, right? That's the worst. But all of it really comes down to like awareness, which is really difficult because sometimes it's powered by willpower.
Yeah. And I'll say this to that point, right? Like, I have this episode on my podcast that I talk about building a foundation. I had a friend of mine, ask me about what advice I would give as far as like dating is concerned and stuff. He found out I do a dating relationship podcast. And I was like, the first thing I would recommend is building a solid foundation. Because I was like, if I were to walk up to somebody now versus me 4 years ago, I want him to be my friend, or it's a female I find attractive, and I get rejected, I'm not going to be any less than who I am. And who I am is pretty A-okay. But the fact is, most people don't like that rejection because they're not A-okay with coming back down to who they really are. They think that they're going to be somebody better by getting this other thing.
Yeah.
So it's like building a house, right? If you build your house and you're like, man, I really love my house. Check out my floors, my tile there. Everything is great. Versus somebody who's like, their house is jankety and it's got like fucked up carpet, and like, the TV's kind of got that one spot that's kind of, a little, they have to come, like, this is a mental house, obviously, but like, they have to come home to that. They have to come home to themselves. And if they are broken, they're not going to like to come home to that. And so when it's tornado season outside, when it's rainy season outside, it's going to shake the house a little bit more. You're going to have drippage in the house. Like, it's going to be fucked. As opposed to if you had put the work into the foundation in the first place, it could be rainy and you're like, the gutter busted, or like, dang, like a tree fell, but it's okay. Like, the rest of the house is pretty much okay. We just got to do this little bit of work. It comes with the territory. Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of things that are going to happen. That's life. But if you have a natural foundation, how do you get that foundation? Exactly like you were just talking about. It's awareness, it's it's reflection, it's spending time with yourself, which everybody on 6th Street is running from, that goes to your therapy sessions. This is just natural. This is 99% of people. I've never heard somebody on your show say, no, I sat with that. And here's all the words that I'm feeling. And I don't know how to process this yet, but nobody's done that. Everybody's running it. Everybody's answer is like drugs and alcohol and sex. And you You can't fuck your way out of problems, man. Like that's just not a scenario. You can't
Yeah.
smoke your way out of problems, and you can't drink your way out of problems. The problems will still be there at the bottom of bottom of the bottle. And
Yeah.
that sounds so cliche, but like you can't fuck your way out of trauma. Like you have
Yeah.
to face it. And until you're solid enough, until you've put all the pieces, mapped all the pieces out, and then until you're solid enough to be able to do that, you will continue running from it. And we are not taught that young enough in education. We're not taught that in family of like how to have a solid foundation. We are taught coping mechanisms to deal with the problems, but we're never taught how to address it head on. And I think one of the best things that you do is tell people to meditate. I think it's still such a foreign word for people that like, they're like, I gotta sit there and like people don't understand it. And like, but it is one of the best things. Reflection, going to a coffee shop, going to go sit down by yourself, going somewhere in public, just being alone. I think just first thing is just being like, hey, have you ever like driven in the car by yourself, guy? Like, have you ever like done something by yourself? And I guarantee the answer is no. And like, that is a great place to start because you are forced to be alone with your problems, and then be like, just take like 2 hours away from like drugs or alcohol and just be alone.
It's because,
Start there.
I think like our especially with social media and like the rise of TikTok and all this different stuff, right? I think a lot of people's dopamine receptors are just fried, right? And so it's like
Absolutely.
even being alone is like a lot to ask. And before we move to that subject, I wanted to say something about the foundation piece that you were saying, because I think one thing and I'll just speak about this from a guy's perspective, right? What's really easy to do, and it's like a common trap that I see like people like my peers fall into as well, is that it's like build your foundation and like, all that good stuff and come back home to like something that's still solid. But if you're not doing that, it's not just that they come back to something that's broken and they don't want to do that. I think a lot of young guys, I mean, I've been at fault for this too. It's like when you go out and you meet other people, they're almost validating this non-existent thing, like non-existent house or mansion that you have. They're validating that, right? For example, to make it more concrete, if you're a guy and your life is absolute shit, but you know how to put on some good clothes, put on some nice cologne, and go talk to a beautiful woman and get her to sleep with you that night or something like that, right? And you're able to score, you somehow feel validated in your head that suddenly you don't have that shitty house and it's a mansion and it's all this great stuff. But really, reality sets in a few days later, and it becomes this cycle of like, that's your fix, right? That's the Band-Aid, right? And that's like only going to exist if you continue in this self-sabotaging
perpetuating cycle.
Right?
Yeah.
Perpetuating cycle, right? And I think that's a more common trap that like young guys like fall into. And it's to your point, like that you need to be able to build a foundation, not just so that you have something good to come back to. I think it's like, for me personally, I did it and I've done it. And I think it's more to like be like, I'll be just okay and be the same person. It's the same exact thing, except it's like, I am still this person regardless of this person rejecting me or wanting to be with me, right? Like, and just having that fine line between the two is so important that I can't even imagine going back to like that, right? Like I can't imagine a world where I don't feel good being on my own and doing what I do. Like no one can tell me like that I'm not what I am anymore, right? Like I sometimes and sorry about the tangent, but I sometimes tell people like probably 4 or 5 years ago when I was like more of like a up and coming, like being nervous around the camera, stuff like that, like letting people's opinions get to me and stuff like that. Like maybe if I was on the street at that time, like someone calling me like, dude, this show is cringe as fuck, man, you should get a real job. Something like that would have like set me off and like made me feel like shit for weeks. Now I'm just like, can you please get out of my shot? Like you're really in the camera shot, like, please, like let's keep this moving. Like I remember one time, my friend, like now he has like 8 million something. Like we were at Zilker and we were shooting like just regular interviews. He wanted to be part of my content. And this dude, this 40-year-old white guy just comes up and he's like, don't you kids have anything better to do? Get a real job. Go to sales. Go do this. Go do that. And like 2 seconds later, this group of like younger like kids like came up to him and me, and they were like, "Oh, are you guys shooting TikTok stuff? Like, how many followers do you guys have?" And I typically hate that question, but in front of this white dude, had to show him what was up. You know what I mean? Had to show him what was up, and it was like,
you
I don't
hit
think
him with that flex.
yeah, exactly. And I don't think he realized in that moment that like, yeah, what it might be different than like what you grew up on, but this is still very much real. And obviously you're not going to flex to the point where you say, "Hey man, actually I'm making more than you ever would in a year, but like in like half that time." Like you don't do that. But in that moment, I wanted my friend to do it because I knew how much he was making. And I was like, this guy has no freaking idea. But the whole point is that before, it would have been much more likely for someone to be able to get to me and like break me somehow in terms of what I'm doing, because I never felt fully like good on my own. And I think all of this traces back to like, growing up in a single mother home. Like you're not really taught how to be a man and be on your own. I'm sure you relate to this to a certain degree. Like I didn't have someone teaching me how to shave my mustache, right? Like I always joke about
Right.
that. And it's like I didn't have like the little things. So you have to almost become like this force to be reckoned with. And once you have that, no one can take it away from you.
To the point of like, right, like this world, everything is full of distractions. It's so easy to distract yourself. Like it's almost like it's some sort of like conspiracy to be like, just distract yourself and don't worry about self-growth. And I'm not going to get on my Alex Jones, but it's government, like they're black helicopters, we've got the documents to prove that, you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to do that
right there.
But I mean, it is so easy to get lost in the sauce. And
It
what
is.
I think, like this is, I'm going to draw back to the importance of people like us. The world needs people like us, like whether it's impacting one person or 100 people, because like to remind people to come back to themselves and to help heal those things. That's not on a Netflix show. And if it is, they're just like, they'll cry and then they'll watch whatever other show that they're going to watch anyways. Like it's not sticking. There's nothing that sticks to it. We're not taught it. Again, we're not brought up into it. We see things that are not that. The relationships that are popularized are the celebrity ones, where most of the time they're not always spending a whole bunch of time together. So shout out to somebody like Kristen Bell and like Dak Shepard, like for having a podcast and doing things on the come up together. Like I think that's fucking beautiful, but like, and there's no ego there, and they're they get along, and like that should be relationship goals. It shouldn't be like, hey, we need to have this wedding and it has to have all this dazzle and sprazzle, and like, hey, if a woman wants to be in your life and like, you have to do this and do these things, or you have to, a woman's like, hey, if he doesn't make this money or if he doesn't buy me this, it's like, I don't want to be with that woman anyways. But most of us don't. We just don't step outside of the equation like that because we don't think that's a fucking option. But it is. The option is always to not be a part of that and be a part of this whole other thing that is way more healthier. It may not be what's in it. It may not be popular, but I guarantee you it's like feels so much better. And like so many people, again, this is why I love what you do, because they stand to benefit the people that follow up and the people that do the work and they do try to study more. Like they stand to benefit just such a better lifestyle. Like that's what it comes down to. They stand to gain everything with having a better life and in not being in that perpetuating cycle that I think you try to help people step out of or just be more aware of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you mind me asking what's your relationship status right now?
I'm single as a Pringle baby, but
Yeah.
in no other time have I been okay with being single. It's been one of the most time, like, a lot of time people are saying like, I'm lonely and I want, but it's like, there is a sense of loneliness, but I don't feel alone. And I don't feel like I'm not accomplishing things. And I don't feel like I don't have goals, and I don't feel like I'm not doing something. And I definitely feel confident when I want to go back to dating that it'll be a thing and I'll do it and I'll be even better at it than before, So, but I don't know a lot of people that that can truly say that without it being like, well, you know how it goes, me. I'm just out here getting the money, and I'm just out here living the life, and fuck women, or women are like fuck men. Like, bro, I'm not saying any of that. I think women are
Yeah.
a beautiful species, but I have to have this time for myself, I think.
Yeah, dude. I'm glad you said that, because one of the things I like heard/read about, I don't know where it was, but it was like the most like transformation and self-improvement happens in between like, relationships or stuff like that. When you have time on your own, and how you handle yourself in those years is how you're going to at like what level you're going to be in the next relationship that you're in. For example, my first relationship was in freshman year of college, right? After that, I was single
Mhm.
for like 4 or 5 years. And I look back at that time and I'm like, wow, like it was kind of insane, because like I really just took all of that time for myself. I was like, I don't really like care. Like, yeah, there were people coming in and out and all that good stuff, but it was never like how it is now. Like, how it is now is like really scary, because like I think it has a lot to do with the dopamine being fried and all that, where you're very scared. Like, people are very scared to be alone. They don't take the time to realize that, like, okay, if their relationship didn't work out the way they wanted to, like the last one that they were in, nothing is going to change if they're suddenly in a new one, right? Like, so
Right.
there's a lot of like self-work that needs to be done. It's almost like you need to renovate the house, right? Like, back to that example, you need to renovate the
Mm.
house, make it look amazing and beautiful, so the next person that walks in doesn't see like the stained carpet that you had the last time someone was in there, right? So
Right.
I don't know. I'm glad that you said that you're taking that time, because I think a lot of people would benefit from just like taking a second. Like, you don't
Slowing
need to
down. But
sometimes.
people don't like to be alone, especially, again, back to the thing. They don't like to be alone. They don't like to be by themselves. People would rather be in shitty relationships than be alone. Like,
Yeah.
they almost feel like I think it's one of those like top phobias, like rejection and being alone, or like top. It's like, oh my god, my life is devastating. But also, like, when you sit down people and remind them, like, what were you doing before relationships? And they're like, I was happy. I was like listening to music. I was hanging with friends. You're like, yeah, go do that. That's still there. That's still an option. Like, your life does not have to be consumed by a relationship, and especially with the person who's just as broken as you are and not doing the same, not doing any work, just like you are. Like, you guys, like, you can't put fractions together and get a big, huge whole number. That doesn't make sense. That's not the way that works. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I found it necessary to do that, man. So thank you.
Dude, I'm proud of you. Let's see. I was gonna say, based on this conversation, I feel like we should sometime do something on the street together. I think that would be great. I feel like you're
I'd
qualified. You're the first person I've talked to that probably said stuff that I'm already thinking, and it's like, it's perfect. I think you'd be great if you want to. I'd be happy to like we could schedule an episode sometime in like February or something like that, or March, whenever works for you.
I'd absolutely be a-okay with that, man. That'd be fun as fuck, I think.
Yeah, it would be funny, and you'd see exactly what I'm talking about. And the good thing is that you're single, so this will be awesome. Because let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. All right, when I'm on
Tell me
that
something.
street, all I'll say, okay, I know we both, we love and appreciate women. We love and appreciate our fellow guys, all that good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna just say, if I was a woman, a lot of the stuff that happens to me in that chair, there would be court cases against people, right? And so you will see exactly what happens. Dude, I have women that try to lick me, sit on my lap, dude, like, and I'm just like, and I have to be aggressive, because it's like,
Right. Yeah, I
I'm
heard you one
happy
time.
in
You're
my
like, I have a
relationship.
girlfriend. Yeah, you can't sit here. Don't do that. I got a girlfriend.
One time, and you can. This is documented, okay? One time, this girl tried to sit in my lap, and I'm trying to get her off, and I'm like, there's no fucking way my girl is watching this, and I'm getting in trouble for this thing. And I
Right.
push her off, and literally she falls down in the chair. The chair folds up next to me, and everybody's looking at me, and I'm like, bro, listen to me. If I was a woman right now, and this was reversed, y'all would not be staring at me like this, like I did something
Y'all would be
wrong.
coming up to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. At that moment, I realized that I should like put up a sign that says, I'm not single. Don't come near me. because I've had people that like, and that's why I'm gonna be glad when you're there. So then you can take some of that. You can take all of it.
Listen, I'm gonna
You
try
can
to be
take all of it.
professional.
I've
I'm gonna
had myself turning around like this. Like if this is me sitting in my chair, right? I'll have
uh,
myself like talking to the person and turn around. And there's like girls like just tongue right here, like trying to lick me, and I'm like, dude, what is this? I'm not. This is not a museum. And if it was a museum, don't touch the art, right? Relax.
right. I am not a lollipop. Do
I,
not
I
lick me,
felt I felt
please.
like I needed a podcast to be able to vent that out because I have been traumatized, bro. Like I've been sitting there sometimes in
Let's
my
talk about it.
I'm like I have the mic right here that I get connected to my like camera
Yeah,
guy,
the bell mic.
and I can't. Is this also going to be video, or is it just audio?
What's
This
that? No, this is video. We're videoing. Yeah.
video. Okay. So I have a hand signal, but I'm not going to tell you which ones because then it's going to get spoiled, right? But there's a hand signal I make to my camera guy. That means get me the fuck out, right? Like save me. That's what it means, right? And one time there was a group of girls and like they're all surrounding him trying to figure out how the camera works. He's trying to do his job. And I'm like doing the hand signal, but he doesn't see it. He doesn't
Oh
see it.
no.
And the conversation just keeps going. And I'm like, bro, like if I was single right now, like sure, but like this is getting weird. Like, bro, God, I could go on a whole rant about this, dude.
You're blinking in Morse code for SOS.
Yeah, dude.
Please save me.
Dude, the amount of, and this, I'll end it with this, dude. The amount of situations where, okay, yeah, like I'm doing a podcast style thing, I'm doing a show, it's all fun, it's amazing, it's great, it's funny content, serious content, etc. Dude, but the amount of confidence that some girls have when they come up to me and the stuff they say, I'm just like, it's so violating, bro. It's so violating. There's a girl that was like telling me like she turned one of her traumatizing situations, which was her boyfriend kissing her best friend in front of her, right? And they were both like close and all that stuff. She turned that into like, she was like, so and it was like her and her friend sitting in the chair, and then she looks me dead in the eyes and she's like, so what would you do if a stranger came up to you and told you to take all of your clothes off? And I was just like, what the fuck is going on? I'm supposed to be helping you in this situation. You have a boyfriend. He just happened to kiss your best friend. Let me help you. So anyways, long story short, I want you to experience these things so I could be like, hey, Blake, take this. Take it. I don't want it. Yeah, man. That's one reason why I'm scared shitless to go like touring in different cities. Like without, like, I'm definitely gonna hire some security because there's no fucking way. Like I don't want to end up in a city I have nothing, like no knowlge about on the street.
Right.
I'm not even worried about getting robbed. Okay. I'm worried about getting like violated beyond where I'm in the chair. I don't want to be in that position. So
yeah. Throw all the heat on me. I got it.
Yeah, I got you, dude. You look like you can handle it. It looks like you can handle it pretty well. So,
well, I suppose we'll see come February and March.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm excited.
But yeah, Raza, thank you so much, man, for coming on again. I'd love to have you on again, and we do another one of these because I feel like we just beginning to scratch the surface with some of the questions, and I think some of the more bigger debates on what actually could be helpful for people. So maybe that'll be the part 2. But for now, Raza, take over my show and let people know where they can find you on all the social medias. You know what to do here.
All right. So if you guys are looking to watch the free therapy content, that's underneath Raza's office on all platforms except TikTok. On TikTok, just look up Raza North. That's like my main account. And yeah, there's a lot of different like segments that are going to be coming in. We got shitty dating advice that will be coming in. Because I'm not a relationship coach. So I always like to throw that in there. Another segment that's coming is the confession booth. And you bet your ass that people will have the weirdest things to confess to me because it's going to be anonymous. So yeah, those things are coming soon. And we will begin live streaming so I can do this like more often and not just on the weekend starting in March. So definitely be on the lookout for that.
Awesome. Everybody go follow Raza North. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all the places. And since you're on all the places, you can go ahead and follow the podcast, Unfiltered Bachelor, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You follow me, Money Blakeweather, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Also TikTok, uploading snippets of this. So you'll probably see snippets of this on there. And then you can find it on your favorite podcast app, anywhere podcasts are. That's where the show is. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, whether, you know, it's morning, evening, afternoon. I always appreciate you. And until the next time, we will see you.
They
Peace.
drew me in so close and they held me so tight.